Back in 2008, a seemingly unremarkable computer worm managed to bring the world's most powerful military to its knees. This is the story of Agent.btz, and it's a story about how modern warfare was changed forever. Okay, so picture this. The year is 2008. We're at a US military base somewhere in the Middle East. The air's hot, the work is pretty routine, but a digital time bomb is just about to go off. And it all starts with something so mundane, so incredibly ordinary, it happens thousands of times a day. Someone plugs a USB flash drive into a government laptop. In that one simple moment, everything changes.
Yeah, that single action triggered what would become the most significant breach of U.S. military computer networks in history.
From that one single laptop, a malicious worm began to replicate. Silently, totally invisibly, it moved through the system. It crossed digital air gaps and jumped from unclassified networks to the military's most secret classified systems. It was already inside the walls before anyone even knew there was a threat. So what exactly was this beast that had pierced the heart of the Pentagon's digital infrastructure? Well, let's break down the anatomy of Agent.btz. Okay, first, the basics. A computer worm is a type of malware that, unlike a virus, doesn't need to attach itself to an existing program. Nope, it's a standalone agent, and it's designed to do one thing incredibly well: make copies of itself and spread. Now, what's really interesting here is how Agent.btz actually did its job. It used a then-common feature called Autorun to infect a machine the moment a USB was inserted. Once it was inside, it started scanning the computer for sensitive data, collecting user info and network details. Then it opened a backdoor, a secret channel to communicate with a remote server. And finally, its most crucial function: it would copy itself onto any new USB drive plugged in, ready to start the whole cycle all over again. Unlike worms that spread super fast over the internet, Agent.btz moved at the speed of people. It literally required a human to physically carry it from one machine to another. This made it spread slow, steady, and incredibly hard to track. It was, for all intents and purposes, a digital flu. So the discovery of this digital pandemic triggered an absolutely unprecedented response from the US military. It was a massive cyber containment effort, and they gave it a code name: Operation Buckshot Yankee. The alarm was finally sounded on what should have been a pretty routine Friday at Fort Meade. An NSA analyst, just sifting through logs, noticed a strange signal beaconing out from the secure network. It wasn't a glitch. It was a communication from the worm to its masters. The networks had officially been compromised. What happened next was a frantic, high-stakes cleanup. So in October, the worm was found. By November, the Pentagon issued this super controversial blanket ban on all USB drives, period. Then, all through 2009, teams worked around the clock, eventually developing a tool they nicknamed Magic Eraser to scan and clean infected devices. It was this grueling machine-by-machine fight that took until the very end of the year to resolve. And the scale of that fight is just staggering. It took nearly 14 months, that's over a year, to fully scrub the worm from all military networks and declare them clean. I mean, just think about that. 14 months to kill a single piece of code. So with the infection finally contained, the mission shifted. The digital forensics teams began the hunt for patient zero, and not just the first infected machine, but the people who created the weapon in the first place. This was the central question that investigators and really the whole world wanted answered. Who had the skill and, frankly, the audacity to launch an attack like this against the United States military? You know, in the early days, the theories were all over the map. Some thought it could be a lone, brilliant hacker. Others pointed to China, because little fragments of Agent.btz's code looked similar to code used in previous Chinese cyber attacks. For a while, though, the most honest answer was simply, we don't know. It took years, but in 2016, the US government finally released its official conclusion. In a joint report, the FBI and Department of Homeland Security attributed the attack directly to Russian intelligence services. This wasn't the work of some lone hacker. This was a state-sponsored act of cyber espionage. But the story doesn't just end with cleaning the networks or finding the culprit. The true impact of Agent.btz would be felt for years to come, in its lasting legacy.
You see, before this attack, U.S. cyber defense was, well, it was a loose, scattered collection of different task forces. This whole structure was way too slow and uncoordinated for a threat that just ignored boundaries. Agent.btz forced a total reorganization, and it led directly to the creation of the unified U.S. Cyber Command in 2009. Cybersecurity was no longer just some background IT issue. It was elevated to a critical domain of warfare, right on par with land, sea, air, and space.
Ultimately, Agent.btz was more than just a breach. It was a brutal, effective wake-up call. It demonstrated in the clearest possible terms that a new, invisible battlefield had been opened, and that future wars would be fought not just with bullets and bombs, but with bits and bytes.
Agent.btz proved that a simple USB stick could be a weapon of strategic importance. It was the first major domino to fall in a whole new era of conflict. And that leaves us with a pretty critical question to think about. What happens when the next one falls?